The Loch Ness Monster, located at Busch Gardens, Williamsburg, opened in 1978, has a length of 3,240 feet of track, a height of 130 feet, with a drop of 114. Speeds of up to 60 miles an hour, which includes two inversions that are interlocking vertical loops, and a duration of about 2 minutes, and features two lift hills, which makes this ride very, very unique. It is the first full circuit roller coaster and the only one out there, to my knowledge, that has interlocking loops in this sort of variety. This ride is an absolute icon for Busch Gardens Williamsburg. It is the first roller coaster entrance you come across when you enter the park from the front entrance. So we are here to talk and review about the Loch Ness Monster from Aerodynamics. Let's go.
Now get ready. Here we go.
This review of the Loch Ness Monster will be based on my rides from 2024. The first time that I got to ride the Loch Ness Monster, I got to ride it twice, once in the front and once in the back. And I think I have a pretty solid feel for this attraction. Now let's talk about walking up to the ride. The ride is right at the front of the park. When you go through the entrance, if you just go directly straight, once the gates drop, you literally will come across this ride right then and there. It is the first roller coaster that you come across at the park. And usually because of that, it could be considered the more popular ride because it's right at the front entrance. But most people actually end up gravitating towards Pantheon. But since Pantheon wasn't open on my visit, that was not the case. So when you enter the queue, one of the biggest changes from the previous iteration of Loch Ness Monster is the theming. So in 2024, they rethemed the entirety of Loch Ness Monster and gave it a whole visual and thematic overhaul. I would never got to see it prior to this, but I have to say I love the attention to detail. There's a whole sort of diorama talking about Nessie and how it came to be and the whole legend of the Loch Ness Monster, so on and so forth. They even added this awesome Nessie statue that is located right after the second interlocking loop. So we'll talk about that moment a little bit later on when we go through the layout of the ride. But when you get to the station also is entirely overhauled with a lot of theming, with oars and just more stuff on Nessie, which looks insanely, insanely cool. Even the trains got an overhaul back a couple years before the renovation for its 40th anniversary. So these trains are also relatively new. So let's get into the ride layout. So first off, you go through a tiny dip of a drop. This takes you around a shed where you're greeted by this guy who's also hunting for Nessie. This is a new thing that they added for the ride in 2024, where they have this onboard audio kind of thing, but it's not really onboard audio. It's more of just speakers that are playing during the lift hill portions of the ride. So basically narrating the whole story. It's pretty loud, and that's mainly because the lift hill is also quite loud. This lift hill takes you up 130 feet to where you will then dip down a little bit. You make a right-hand turn, and then you go down your massive 114-foot drop. It's not a very big drop, but this drop takes you right over the lake where the ride goes to the opposite side. It makes a left-hand turn before it does a tiny pop-up before you go down another drop, and this takes you into the top portion of the incline for your first loop, which is the top of the interlocking loop. This loop is so weird to experience when you're going inside of a loop to then take another loop, if that's even how I could describe it. But after this loop, you go up a hill, you slightly turn to the right, you go up into, I guess, a mid-course break. After this, you then turn left, and you go through this massive helix that takes place inside of this rock work. This was one of the biggest changes that they made to the ride during the season, where they added this projection of Nessie as you are going around and around and around. It goes around 2.5 times, and then after that, you are then sent up into that second chain lift hill. It's not as tall as the other one, but after that chain lift hill, you then take another right-hand turn, and this takes you in line to the second interlocking loop, which is the bottom portion of the interlocking loop. Once you go through that loop, you then pass right by Nessie on the right-hand side, and that takes you right up into the brake run for the ride, and that is your ride experience on the Loch Ness Monster. It's actually a pretty long ride duration for a 3,200 length foot of a roller coaster length. So I have to say, first off, aerodynamics, they're not really known for having the smoothest rides experience. The only other ride of this type that I'd ridden is Corkscrew at Cedar Point, and I thought that was one of the roughest coasters I've ever ridden. This ride, I had a feeling was going to be rough. However, it was not rough at all. I actually thought this ride was kind of smooth. And perhaps it could have been the new trains putting into effect that they added a couple years back for its 40th anniversary. But I felt like this ride was pretty smooth. The back row, you got some nice airtime on certain points. The front, you get a little bit of the forces from the drops. It's a really mixed bag. I really don't have a preference of where to sit on this ride, personally. I kind of wish I would have preferred something over the other. But other than that, I think the whole experience in itself and the changes that they made to this ride really makes this ride stand out compared to others. And this truly is a great terrain coaster. Even though it doesn't utilize the terrain that much, it still can qualify that way. And the shot that you could get of these loops from basically anywhere in the park, and you could go right up to these vertical loops too, is one of the best photogenic moments I think of any park could ever get. You could get right in front of these loops. You get so close to Nessie. It is absolutely incredible with the sights that you get from this iconic attraction. And I'm glad that Busch Gardens Williamsburg did everything in their power to restore this ride to be even better in 2024, because this ride is truly great. Definitely one of the biggest surprises of my 2024 coasters that I got to ride. The Loch Ness Monster definitely exceeded expectations. To what I thought was going to be a rather rough ride experience, turned out to be a very fun, themed out coaster experience that I am eager to get back on in the very near future. The Loch Ness Monster truly is a classic and an icon for Busch Gardens Williamsburg that I am pleased that has been restored to be even better than its predecessors prior. And the Loch Ness Monster, no doubt, will be placed pretty high on my ranking for being one of my favorite coasters of 2024, and thus far, one of my favorite coasters that I was able to do when I was at Busch Gardens Williamsburg just last year. That is my review on the Loch Ness Monster at Busch Gardens Williamsburg. Let me know what you think of this classic aerodynamics looper. Leave a like, comment, subscribe, and always thank your ride operators. Have an amazing rest of your day, and I'll see you in the parks real soon. Goodbye.
Here we go.
Thematic.